Tuesday, February 23rd, and this is a meeting of the Gilbert Public Schools Governing Board. We have a need for an executive session pursuant with ARS 38431.03A and 3. The Governing Board may convene an executive session for discussion and/or consultation for legal advice with the Governing Board's attorney regarding Arizona's open meeting law requirements, and that executive session was set for 5 o'clock. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. All those in favor of moving to executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We will recess to executive session. do it on this one? You got that one right. Oh, dude, you're gonna zap yourself. Let's see.
Maybe because they're still worn.
You cut that.
Check. Mic check.
You are fine. We have about 9 minutes before we begin the official agenda, so please feel free to visit with each other for a little bit. Good evening. Today is February the 23rd, and this is a meeting of the Gilbert Governing Board, regularly scheduled business meeting. We have just concluded an executive session, and we will now attend to our regular session agenda. We'll open the meeting with a moment of silence, a pledge led by Ms. Wood, and a call to order. I would ask that during the moment of silence, we remember Jason Mercetz from Campo Verde, student, employees Keith Purdy from Transportation, and Mona Conlon, Business Services, and those who have perished due to COVID. Please join us in a moment of silence.
Dr. Santa Cruz, may I add one more person, please?
Go right ahead.
Mrs. Peggy Dole, who taught at Gilbert L for very many years also, in our moment of silence.
Thank you for that.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, board members. We will now call the roll. Item 2.04, Ms. Wilson.
Miss Laurie Wood,
Here.
Dr. Charles Santa Cruz,
Here.
Mr. Reed Carr,
Here.
Miss Sheila Ugeti,
Here.
Ms. Jill Humphreys.
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. We'll now move to item 3, is approval of the agenda. Item 3.01. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Humphreys. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote to approve tonight's agenda. Item 3.01. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Meeting agenda is approved. Item 4, Superintendent's Recognition Awards. 4.01. Dr. McCord, we yield to you.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members. Tonight we've got some treats for you. I'll start off on just some recognitions. We have National Merit finalists, Mesquite High, and I pardon my if I mispronounce someone's name. From Mesquite High, Hong Tao Lu and Donovan Harp. From Desert Ridge High, Adeline Dow. From Campo Verde, Lauren Brandt. From Highland High, Marianne Wood, Isaac Root, and Jason Callalang. And from Gilbert Classical Academy, Matthew Hanna. Congratulations to all of our National Merit finalists. We have Flynn Scholarship finalists. Jennifer Tran from Mesquite High, Hanan Abdul from Highland High School, Sophia Hammer from Gilbert Classical Academy, and Eugenia Truckle from Gilbert Classical Academy. Congratulations to our Flynn Scholar finalists. Next, we will have a presentation. We have a football team from Mesquite High that has won the championship once again, back to back. And I'd like to bring up their principal, Mr. Rod Houston, because he would like to say a few words about this and present some things. Mr. Houston.
Thank you, Dr. McCord, Dr. Santa Cruz, and Governing Board for having us here tonight. We're extremely excited to come back for the second year in a row in our back-to-back state championships. We didn't feel like we could bring the whole team tonight, but we did bring some people that we want to make sure get recognized, and then we have some gifts for you. Our team had a great season. We got into the playoffs. They came from behind in every game in the fourth quarter to win all the way through the finals. Super exciting final, win the game in the last second on a 2-point conversion. I don't know that we could have asked for much more. My heart almost burst, but it was good. Do want to bring up our guys, and so I got our athletic director, Mr. Rudy Alvarado. Then we have our head coach, Scott Hare. Scott is also the 4A Conference Coach of the Year and the Desert Sky Region Coach of the Year. Just bring him up. Yeah. We also have with us a couple of our team captains. We got Judson Cole. Judd is a all-state offensive tackle through more than one organization. Got that for him. So we're super excited to have him coming up. And then Andrew Morris is an all-state linebacker and an all-state receiver for us. So we're glad to have Andrew coming up. And we just wanted to thank you again for supporting high school athletics, the comprehensive high schools here in Gilbert Public Schools, and going through and making sure that we got an opportunity to play this season. So we brought you some autographed footballs from our team. So thank you to the governing board and the superintendent.
Congratulations, Mesquite High football.
Football. I'll do that.
Once again, let's hear it for Mesquite High football. Now we have a little treat for you. So each year we have an oratorical contest that's made up of kindergarten through 8th grade students in our district, and they compete for 3 divisions: the K2 division, the 3rd through 6th division, and the 7th through 8th grade division. And tonight we have winners from each one of those divisions, and they are going to perform their oratorical speech for you this evening. In order as they'll come up, and we're going to come downstairs and watch you from the right side, and they will be taking off their masks because this is one of the presentations in an oratorical. They have to do expressions. We've got them socially distanced, and they don't move around and walk all over the place. So we're very happy that they wanted to be here this evening. We have Ruby Webb from Superstition Springs, the K2 winner. We have Evelyn Rem Gertis from Highland Park, 3rd through 6th grade winner. And Raina Braun from South Valley, the 7th and 8th grade winner. And we will start with Ruby, and then Evelyn, and then Raina. So Ruby, come on up.
Born in 1933 in New York, Ruth Bader grew up during a time when all people did not enjoy equal rights, including women. Her mother felt that education was important and expected young Ruth to take her schooling seriously. Ruth was the first in her family to attend college. She graduated at the top of her class at Cornell. It was there that she met the love of her life, Marty Ginsburg. Shortly after graduation, they married and moved to Oklahoma, where Marty was stationed. It was there that Ruth was directly affected by laws unfair to women. When she became pregnant with their first child, she was demoted at her position at the Social Security Administration, which was perfectly legal at the time. Ruth enrolled at Harvard Law School, one of 9 women in a class of 500 students. Some felt that women didn't deserve to be there, including her dean, who asked, "Why are you here, taking the place of a man?" Ruth quietly worked hard at her studies and was the first woman to make the Harvard Law Review. She transferred to Columbia Law School and graduated first in her class. Even with all these accomplishments, no law firm would hire a woman. She was finally able to secure a position, but only after several of the male professors vouched for her. This was only one of the many injustices throughout her distinguished career. While she didn't back down from a challenge, she wasn't afraid of being the only woman in the room because she knew her capabilities. During the 1970s, while a law professor at Columbia, Ruth Bader Ginsburg directed the influential Women's Rights Project of the American Civil Liberties Union. In this position, she led the fight against gender discrimination and successfully argued 6 landmark cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1980, President Carter nominated Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the U.S. Court of Appeals. There, she earned the reputation of working with conservatives and liberals alike. In 1993, President Clinton nominated Judge Ginsburg to the U.S. Supreme Court. In her rulings, she considered both sides, crossing party lines if necessary. Judge Ginsburg felt that both sides of a question needed to be explored and approached cases with reason. Judge Ginsburg acknowledged differing viewpoints. At a 2009 graduation speech, she spoke about affirmative action and said, "Effective participation by members of minority groups and women in the civil life of our nation is essential if the dream of one nation, indivisible, is to be realized. We all profit from a more diverse, inclusive society. Understanding, accommodating, even celebrating our differences, while pulling together for the common good." Her advice to that graduating class is what all students should follow. She said, "As you leave here and proceed among life's paths, try to leave tracks. Use the education you've received to help repair tears in your communities. In other words, try to leave tracks for those who follow to show them the way toward justice for all our citizens." Today, our country is more divided than ever. There is anger and dissension among our citizens. Our viewpoints divide family and friends, neighbors and communities. What if we took Ruth's advice? What if we approached the path to equality like Justice Ginsburg by acknowledging the pain, hurt, and frustration on both sides? What if we didn't shout or yell, but listened to others with different viewpoints? What if we came together with the common goal of equality, and then, just like Justice Ginsburg, took one step at a time toward our shared goal?
So little. Together we can do so much. Some of you will recognize this quote, others will not. This quote isn't just a group of words to me. It's all of my life achievements. At a young age, I was diagnosed with trachoma, which meant my eyes were almost always bothering me. A few years later, my mother died, and my father decided that it was too hard to raise me and my brother Jimmy. Hence, we were sent to the Tewksbury Almshouse. At this time, I was almost completely blind. Due to overcrowding and underfunding, the almshouse had a high mortality rate, and I ended up losing Jimmy to tuberculosis within 4 months. I was devastated, but nonetheless, I persevered through the dark times. Soon after Jimmy's passing, a few people took an interest in me. I soon underwent multiple eye operations that eased symptoms of trachoma for short periods of time. When my eyesight was a bit better, I got a job as a housemaid that ended quickly due to my lack of sight. When I arrived back at the almshouse, I soon learned about a school for the blind. All of a sudden, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to get an education. When I was around 14 years old, a panel of commissioners came to inspect the almshouse. At that moment, I knew that speaking to them would be the only way of achieving my goal of getting an education. I followed the panel around tirelessly until they were finally done with their tour. Right before they left, I bolstered all of my courage and told one of the commissioners that I wanted an education. 4 months later, I found myself at Perkins Institute for the Blind. When I first arrived, life there was pretty rough at first. I was the only one who didn't know how to read or write their name. I had never owned a nightgown or a hairbrush, and I certainly didn't know how to thread a needle. Nevertheless, I was wise in the ways of the world. Most of my peers and some of my teachers didn't give me any grace. I was straight up humiliated. But as they say, there's a silver lining on every cloud. This feeling of humiliation drove me to be even more determined in my studies, and within 2 years I closed all of my academic gaps. I had yet another surgery on my eyes, but this time it finally worked. I could finally read print. Despite my near expulsions due to my sharp tongue and temper, I still graduated and gave the valedictory speech. I told everyone to find their own place in the world, even when I myself didn't know how to do that. I was afraid of the future and what it would bring, when all of a sudden the opportunity of a lifetime came bounding in. During the summer of 1886, I received a request to teach a young 7-year-old girl. I was surprised, let alone intimidated, by the opportunity to teach such a young girl. It took me almost a year to bolster the courage and skills I needed to go to Alabama and start a new chapter in my life. Most of you are more familiar with the story of my student, Helen Keller. I am her teacher, Anne Sullivan. When I first began teaching Helen, I taught her using standardized methods, and let me tell you, she would have no part of it. She was constantly distracted by the wonders of the outside world. This showed me that I needed to switch learning styles. Much like the teachers of today, we persevered through dark times using unconventional methods. We switched learning styles and broke most all of the rules about teaching the deafblind, but we didn't care. We were having fun learning. Miraculously, in only 6 months, Helen had learned 575 words, the entire Braille system, and multiplication tables up to 5. This was a wonderful start, but I felt that the limited resources in Alabama were limiting Helen's ability to learn, so we moved back to Perkins Institute for the Blind. When we first arrived, there was a lot of tension between me and some of the teachers, so Helen and I decided to live at the school for long periods of time and Alabama for long periods of time. When I was around 25 years old, and when Helen was around 11, Helen wrote a story for the Perkins director's birthday. This led to people thinking that she had plagiarized the story and led to many investigative interviews. The whole ordeal deeply scarred both me and Helen, and we never returned to Perkins Institute. Our journey took us to Radcliffe College, where I interpreted lessons for Helen, making her the first deafblind student to ever graduate college. 6 years after World War I, Helen and I got the opportunity to be advocates for the American Foundation for the Blind. Helen and I lived out the rest of my days side by side in my New York home. Thus I end my story with one of my own quotes. The future for all of us will be tragic if we do not find a way to use the vast educational resources of this country to serve their true purpose of education, truth, and justice. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rosie the Riveter, but I am more than a riveter. I'm a machinist, a welder, a builder, a foreman, an electrician, a construction worker, a baseball player, and even a soldier. I represent all the women who answered our country's call to join the war effort by working. When the United States entered World War II, most men were called to serve in the military. Meanwhile, the demand for airplanes, ships, and guns skyrocketed as the country realized that the Great War was not the war to end all wars, and we needed supplies to fight the Axis powers. So who would fill this major labor shortage? Us women, of course. My picture was first taken in 1942 by Westinghouse Electric Corporation to recruit women and inspire workers to do their best. Soon after this, Red Evans and John Jacob Leo wrote a song about me, which became very popular. This song and poster became so inspirational that the U.S. Army decided to use it to recruit more desperately needed workers. On May 29, 1943, another version of me, painted by Norman Rockwell, appeared in the Saturday Evening Post. I was depicted on my lunch break, at work, riveting gun in my lap, stepping on Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, squashing this Nazi symbol like a bug. And it worked. Over 19 million women joined the workforce. We made over 297,000 airplanes, 88,000 warships, and 47 million tons of ammunition. Now let me tell you a bit about life before we were called to work. Most of us finished high school but never attended college, because college was for men. None of us took classes in trades or shop at high school because those were boy classes. And many of us had small children at home that needed to be cared for. So how did we do it? We pooled our resources. Neighbors would take alternating shifts at the factory while trading childcare responsibilities with each other. One member of a group would wash clothes while another would cook meals. It was a tough life, but we were all fighting the Axis powers together. As I have said, you can always tell who the strong women are. They are the ones you see building each other up instead of tearing each other down. Before I came on the scene, women were expected to wear skirts or dresses out in public. But who can run a turret lathe in a dress and heels? We needed to wear work clothes, like jeans, overalls, blonde hair pulled back, and heavy work boots. Oh, and a headband meant that you were Rosie, which was a very patriotic fashion statement. Despite our lack of early training, we not only did it, we did it better than our male predecessors. Production increased, quality increased, and safety improved with us at these jobs. Yet even the best of us were only paid 50% of what men were paid. Now this may sound insulting, but back then, we were paid on what we needed, not what we were worth. Almost all of us were supported by men. We didn't have our own houses or even bank accounts. That would come much later, thanks to women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. After the war, many men came home and we were laid off from our jobs. Factory owners and supervisors thanked us for our service and sent us back to run households. Now you may think this is the end of my story, but it was just the beginning of an era in American history. We proved that we can not only do women's jobs, we can do men's. We can run households, work in factories, manage our money, work as doctors, lawyers, even soldiers. We can do anything we want to. As years passed, some of us even went back to work. But we all told our stories to our nieces, daughters, and granddaughters, who became their own versions of Rosies. We can do it.
Please give one more hand to Ruby, Evelyn, and Raina. I had the pleasure of being at the oratorical contest, and although these three are definite winners, everyone there did a fantastic job, and the competition was extremely difficult, but thank you for representing Gilbert Public Schools at the next level, if that's where you go. Thanks again. Dr. Santa Cruz, that concludes my recognitions for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. And just a note from me as a representative of the board, it is impressive and inspiring to hear these three young ladies speak and to speak so eloquently about the contributions of the women of this country. Thank you for enlightening us again. We'll now move to Superintendent's Report, Item 5, 5.01. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members, and again, good evening to everybody here tonight and online. First, I'd like to thank our Director of Health Services, Jennifer Frost, and Director of Safety and Security, Al Kane, for all the work they did to establish and implement the Moderna vaccine distribution at our pod on Saturday and Sunday, February 13th and 14th. We were able to vaccinate over 2,400 staff from Gilbert Public Schools, Higley Public Schools, Queen Creek Public Schools, and surrounding daycare and facility employees. This was in partnership with Albertsons and Safeway Pharmacies. A top-level executive who was in attendance on Saturday from Safeway told me that our pod was the best planned and executed distribution sites that he has had the pleasure of working with during this pandemic. Additionally, thank you to all of those that volunteered on both days: office staff, school support staff, teachers, administrators, and community volunteers all pitched in to make this happen. And a big thank you, especially to Highland High School, for being such gracious hosts for the event. Again, to all, thank you for everything that you did. The second dose will be administered at Highland High School on Saturday and Sunday, March 20th and 21st. We will send out information to sign up as we move closer to the event. Last night, we held the first of 3 community meetings regarding proposed changes for the 2021-22 school year. Our proposal is to combine Burke and Houston Elementary at Burke Elementary and move Neely to Houston location. Thank you to all of you that attended the meeting at Houston last night and for your thoughts and questions. The next meeting will be held at Burke Elementary tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., and the final meeting will be held on Thursday evening at 6 p.m. at Neely Elementary. We will then present feedback and information to the governing board during a work study on Tuesday, March 2nd, with a possible vote on the proposal at a regular board meeting on Tuesday, March 30th. And lastly, spring break is approaching. Monday, March 8th through Monday, March 15th is our spring break this year. School will resume on Tuesday, March 16th. While on break, please be cautious and safe, and please take care of each other. Dr. Santa Cruz, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. Move to item 6. It's a request to speak to the governing board. We have 6 community members who have expressed an interest in speaking to the board. 4 regarding mask wearing, and 2 regarding gifted education. We will start with those wishing to speak on gifted education. We'll start with Katie Thorpe, and then Galina Vershagina. If you'll please go ahead with the recorded message. The board may make an open call to the public during a public meeting, subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on an issue within the jurisdiction of the public body. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual board members may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, may ask the staff to review a matter, or may ask a matter to be put on a future agenda. However, members of the board shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during the open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. During the open call, the board requests that speakers refrain from voicing complaints against school personnel or any person connected with the district, as it may impact due process rights. Policy KE, KEB, and KED are provided by the board for disposition of legitimate complaints, including those involving individuals. Forms required for use of these policies can be obtained from the Gilbert Public Schools website. Thank you. Kathy Thorpe, and then Galena.
Hello, I'm Kathy Thorpe, and I'm a parent of children in Gilbert Public Schools, grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. I am also a member of the Gifted Education Parent Council. Thank you to the board for being here and for giving me time to speak. I'm here to talk about the needs of gifted children. As you may know, gifted children are generally the top 3% of the population, and on a bell curve, children with special needs are generally the bottom 3% of that same curve. As a society, we spend a lot of resources helping those children with special needs, as well we should. I want to point out that gifted children also have very diverse needs that deserve to be addressed. I'm very appreciative that GPS has formed the Gifted Education Parent Council to mirror the Special Education Parent Council in order to help meet those needs. I appreciate the programs in place like the one at Town Meadows, Highland Junior High, and the schools that have ALP teachers and cluster models. The GPS vision statement for gifted reads as follows. Gilbert Public Schools is a premier provider of services to pre-K through grade 12 students identified as gifted or twice exceptional, using research-based instruction to address the needs of the whole child. I believe that this vision is an end goal that GPS is working toward, and we have come a long way, but we have a long way ahead of us to make this vision a complete reality. I believe that gifted children deserve to have services in the primary grades. They deserve to be challenged and to learn something new every day. Many families have left the district because these needs are not being met. Starting a new program or expanding the current program from Town Meadows to offer self-contained gifted classes to grades 1 through 3 would be one excellent way to accomplish this. I also believe that all elementary schools should have training for teachers who have gifted children in their classes. I know that gifted training for teachers and gifted services and curriculum varies from school to school. I would like to see these items standardized across all elementary schools in the district. I'm offering my help and support to aid in the further meeting the needs of gifted children. Please call on us at the Gifted Education Parent Council to let us know how we can be of service to the district in fulfilling the vision statement. Let's bolster our program and get families back from charters and other districts. Thank you.
That's the first time I'm doing it. So, good evening. My name is Galina Vereshchagina. I am a mother of 2 children currently in Gilbert Public Schools, and I'm an associate professor of economics at ASU and a Gilbert resident since 2011. Last week, I sent a letter to the GPS board advocating for the extension of the self-contained gifted program to younger grades. 20 other parents signed this letter, and tonight 2 of us decided to come over and speak and explain why we need such a program is needed. So thank you so much for giving us such an opportunity. 10 years ago, our family was looking for a long-term home, and eventually we decided to settle in Gilbert to a large extent because of all the opportunities it offers to families, including its excellent schools. But we were very surprised when our daughter started kindergarten. In a few months, we started seeing warning signs. So Liz, who was always eager to earn, would come home and say that school is not exciting, that it's too easy, and that she'd rather learn at home. So in a couple of months later, she was formally tested as gifted, and her teacher really went out of her way to try to help and engage her in class and challenge her, and we are very, very grateful for this. But looking forward, we were concerned about the future. We were not sure whether the cluster model would be able to meet her needs academically, and probably even more important, socially. So imagine a child who is being consistently asked to do an alternative assignment, or is being asked to sit and read in the corner, which often happens to academically advanced children. So we were not sure that we really wanted our daughter to be in that situation. So based on our experience and the experiences of many parents we talked to, we knew that Liz would not be able to thrive within the cluster model that the Vista Lakes Elementary had to offer. And we started looking for other options. It turns out that outside of the GPS, many districts at schools offer self-contained gifted programs starting from early grades. And we ended up transferring Liz to a Centon charter school where we saw her thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. In there, at least a third of the families were the families residing in GPS district that chose to move to a different school because Gilbert Public Schools could not offer to their children what their children needed. And over time, I came to meet at least 20 other families who did exactly the same. So I believe that expanding self-contained gifted program to younger grades will help align the GPS gifted education with its vision of being a premier provider of gifted services and will help retain students in the district, which ultimately will be financially beneficial. So I hope the board will consider the possibility of doing it, and the great first step would be to survey the GPS families and the families in the neighboring districts to assess the demand for such a program. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation and hope that the board will support this initiative.
Thank you. Next, we have 4 speakers. The topic is mask wearing. Nicole Gutierrez, Lindsay Stevens, Milana Withy Lara, and Hannah Silby. We'll start with Nicole.
Hello, my name is Nicole Gutierrez and I'm a senior at Highland High School. I'm going to tell you my experience about COVID and how I got it and how it affected me and my family. So my dad and I both got it around the same time. It was in January, and I had gotten a COVID exposure in my math class. We were told to quarantine, but we thought it would just be one of those kind of, it's a cold, that type of stuff. We are very heavy on wearing our masks and stuff, and I don't really take it off. I took it off to take a sip of water. I was wrong about how I wasn't going to put my family in danger or anything. So no one in that class wears masks at all. If they do, it's under their chin or under their nose. Being in that class, which isn't available online, along with a lot of my other classes, has put not only me, but my family in grave danger. My father is a type 2 diabetic, and my mother is severely asthmatic. I am mildly asthmatic, and my grandmother who lives with us has medical issues such as hypertension, type 1 diabetes, and heart issues, along with possible cancer. Being in this class, I brought the deadly virus to my house. I gave it to my father first. He thought he had a normal cold, and it got so bad until he couldn't breathe and was terrified and had to go to the hospital. He ended up on a heavy breathing tube pushing 90% of oxygen into his lungs. That did not work. He had to go onto a ventilator, which he was there for around 15 days. He was scared for his life that he would never be able to see us again. Before we got off the ventilator, we called him. He let me know not to blame myself for anything that happened. I fell into a depression, and I was thinking I'm causing my own father to die. I immediately broke down into all the type of attacks you could imagine: anxiety, panic, and more. I was the reason my father was at death's door. Him being diabetic also didn't help, as it attacked him more since his immune system was already weakened. There is not a second I don't blame myself for his sickness. Not only did he get COVID, but he got COVID pneumonia. Since the coronavirus's main target is for the lungs and the immune system, it's really dangerous for me now to go home after school because people do not demonstrate about caring about others at my school. When I had COVID, I was asymptomatic, but I did end up also getting COVID pneumonia and bronchitis mixed together. I missed school for a month, and I'm in a lot of AP classes. From one mask not being worn, you can hurt a lot of other people around you. One person in my classrooms can get 6 other people sick, since it's like the setup of it. I I'm scared to go home now as I still have a risk of bringing it home of the second strain. So my message would just be, like us students who have people we care about need others to have, and I know you can't teach this, human decency or even how to wear masks properly, because one aerosol can ruin another's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Hi, my name is Lindsay Stevens, and I'm a senior at Highland High School. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for allowing us to use your voices as you taught us. Back in August, we were promised a safe learning environment, one with mask wearing, social distancing, and if we met criteria, being an infection rate of 5 to 7%. When we came back to school this past January, the infection rate was 23%. And, I have some photo evidence. I'm not going to show it, but I'll show you guys later. This pandemic has worn away at many things in our lives. For some of us, the cancellation of graduation ceremonies and life events, and for others, beloved family members. This pandemic has done something to all of us, however, in the same effect. It has divided us. Currently, there is a grim divide at Highland, and although many toe the line, there are some friendships across the divide. It is tearing us apart. Each of us have a different backgrounds, families, stories. I live with a person with a pre-existing lung condition, and I consistently see my elderly family. So I am very concerned about coronavirus and the possibility of giving it to my susceptible family. Each of us have a different background, families, and stories. I personally choose to wear crop tops and short shorts in the summer because I believe comfort is important. However, just because we all have a different background, family, and story does not mean we are able to bend the rules because of them while on school grounds. This meaning, even if another student does not have the same connection to coronavirus, perhaps they do not have at-risk family members, or they've already had the virus, or they don't believe in the virus, these ramifications do not and should not stand on school grounds. Even though the rule technically states all persons, including but not limited to staff, students, and visitors, shall wear a face covering while on any district property, in any district facility, and at any district event, whether indoors or outdoors. Tonight, we are just asking for the enforcement of masks while inside the building. There are giant crowds of maskless kids we often have to swerve and avoid outside. However, a lot of the time it is not possible. As it is a smaller space and it is truly honestly impossible for us to avoid the influx of people not wearing masks inside. To take our own measures, we wear multiple masks all day long, we hold our breath, and we shield our eyes in the hallway. We take every long route to do our best to avoid them. Please let you know you are not our first listeners, and we have tried our best to avoid taking time from you all by having meetings with our counselors, our administrators, and our principal. These meetings were very helpful in expressing our concerns, and our principal has taken some steps, but due to the number of students overwhelming the staff, she says she cannot control this. We have a few other ideas. Other schools have implemented that work very well. On many campuses, sorry, I'm running out of time. I have about a...
If you'd like, you can email the rest of it or the whole entire speech to the board.
Okay, I will definitely email it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Ilana?
Hi, my name is Milana with Ilara, and I'm a student at Highland High School. I'm a senior this year. I've been at Gilbert Public Schools for most of my schooling, so I have first-hand experiences of what and who we are here to speak about today. And I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to speak, and yeah. In previous years, I've seen firsthand that the dress code is very important to teachers and other administrators. Many students, mostly females, have been dress coded in the past almost every single day because showing skin is distracting to other students. To me, wearing your mask incorrectly is more distracting. So wearing your mask is included in the dress code, and yet many teachers do not enforce it if someone is violating the rule. And Sorry, my mind is just, okay. So, people breaking this rule is way more distracting and detrimental than a student wearing a tank top in hot Arizona weather. We are afraid to sit near other students. We are afraid to walk through the hallways, the ones where we have resorted to holding our breath and shielding our faces with our hands because of the overwhelming amount of students who do not wear their mask properly or even at all. Why does my education have to be compromised because someone doesn't have any sympathy for their peers? No other dress code rule affects someone's education. No other rule makes one afraid to even show up to class. I am asking you to sympathize with us and to hear your students out. The board is supposed to protect us, and we are begging for you to do your part. We have done ours, but now have had to overstep our job and have damaged our relationships with other students for just simply asking them to pull up their mask. Some of us have even called us derogatory names because we are vocal and care about our families and our friends. This is our last resort, and we need people like you who have the power to please do something. The group I'm here with today recently had a meeting with the Highland principal. She informed us that it is very difficult for administration to monitor who is and who isn't wearing a mask correctly, like Lindsay said. The age group at Highland, according to the CDC, are going to be asymptomatic. So we have no idea who has it and who doesn't, and it could be the students not properly wearing their masks. We have 3,000 students walking through these hallways. We need to go back to hybrid. These rules are not enforced, and there's no other solution in order to keep our families safe. Half of our staff here are not enforcing the rules, and if there was more help available, a stronger education system surrounding masks and consequence for those who violate the rules would take so much stress off of teachers and students who worry about bringing this deadly virus home to their families. Some students have the argument of just go online, which has been proven false. I've personally tried to go online, but all of my classes, which are AP, have all been at the same exact time, and other classes weren't even offered at all. We have no other option but to step in an infected building. We are forced to hurt Gilbert Public Schools families just to attend school. Thank you.
So the group I came here today with, we have some questions we would like to ask you guys. So we have 4 questions. The first being, how are the cases being counted? Like into the system.
During the public comment section, we're not allowed to answer back. We're just allowed to listen.
Okay.
So you can ask the questions and then we can ruminate on them later.
So I'm going to ask the questions and then read the rest of Lindsay's thing. The second question is, if I tested on Friday and if I test positive on Sunday, would that be counted? And if not, why? The third question is, many students with mask exemption forms play sports at our school or have part-time jobs where they have to wear their mask, and they do. And my question is, what types of doctors or healthcare workers are allowed to sign the mask exemption, as some students get it signed by doctors that are not specialized in respiratory health, such as a chiropractor, and are they also allowed to have it signed by any relatives that are in the healthcare system? And my fourth question is that if students cannot absolutely wear the mask, could we at least incorporate the face shield into the form, as many of our handicapped students do? To finish off Lindsay's speech, our principal has taken some action steps, but we were told by her that they are often unable to effectively enforce these rules due to the number of students overwhelming the staff. We have a few ideas other schools have implemented that have worked very well. On many campuses, they instated the rule that if you have your mask purposely off or incorrectly inside the building, you are moved to online school for 2 weeks. Online school was so mentally draining for a lot of students and aggravating to many parents, and that is the reason we are here today. The reason we were allowed to go back to in-person learning is because of masks and other health protocols. Those who do not follow the health protocol obviously do not truly value in-person learning. We do not want to be forced back into online schools because the truth is that the situation we present to you today violates Arizona Department of Health Services Emergency Measure 20 2020-04, as well as the Governor of the State and of Arizona's Executive Order 2020-51. There is nothing more fun to look forward to than graduation for many of the students in senior prom, but there is something more important than those events: the 500,071 dead as of yesterday. That is more Americans lost than in World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War all put together.
Time. Again, thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker. And we will move to item 7.
Dr. Santa Cruz, before you go on, I would like to say that I appreciate the comments that we're getting via online and being sent to us. I think there was 9 or 11 of them today, and I spent the time.
14.
It's up to 14. Okay, I spent the time reading them, and I appreciate that parents and community members are able to give us comments online too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti, and thank you for bringing that again to the public's attention. Also would like to commend the students and parents who spoke this evening. You are certainly a service to your community and your peer group, and we commend you for the courage to come forward and speak your mind. Item 7.01 is the monthly budget report. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, tonight Ms. Betts will present our monthly budget report.
Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Santa Cruz, Dr. McCord. This will be very short this evening. Next week we are scheduled to present to you the revised number 2 budget, as well as do a comprehensive budget projection presentation to you as well. So I just wanted to point out just a few highlights on this month's report of reflective of year-to-date January 31st. So let's see, where am I supposed to point? Oh, I got to turn it on. Sorry, excuse me. I'm going to point it. So as you can see at the top line that's highlighted in yellow is our maintenance and operations fund. When we presented the budget projection to you a couple of weeks ago, we anticipated a revised budget of, a revised budget of $249 million. You can see that this revised budget number 2 pending is $257 million. I want to share with you that new data arrives and we're calculating the average daily membership daily. And we received an update on those numbers yesterday. And so we're expecting that the revised budget number 2 pending will be just over $260 million when we present to you next week. So that's very good news. As we are being funded on current year average daily membership, the budget capacity changes daily here in Gilbert Public Schools. So in addition, you can see the year-to-date expended encumbered and the available balance of just under $14 million. That year-to-date expended encumbered does not account for the new allocation of the ESSER 2 monies, which we know will be $9.7 million for Gilbert Public Schools. So the overall effect of that will be that year-to-date expended encumbered will be decreased by that same about $9 million, which will mean the available balance will go up, and that will improve our budget projection for the fiscal year 2022. But we'll get into all of those details next week. To continue the conversation, I'm sorry, okay. So going to the next slide, there we go. The federal grants, we wanted to make sure that we included another row for the ESSER 2 on the federal grants page. As you can see, the revised budget number 2 will have that amount reflected. And we have not determined how that was going to be spent yet, but that will be shared with you next week as well. Let's see. And then on the state grants, just wanted to share the biggest change on the building renewal grant is we have received now all of the reimbursement revenues from the School Facilities Board, eliminating the negative in the building renewal fund. In addition, we didn't highlight this, but the results-based funding, which we intend to distribute to the employees that are eligible in the first paycheck in March, you will be approving that tonight at this board meeting. On our enterprise funds, as you know, we are monitoring these funds closely, as these are the two funds that have been consistently negatively impacted by the pandemic with the decrease in activity, et cetera. However, note that on nutrition services, the estimated revenues has been increased at this time due to the USDA's change that all students will be offered a free breakfast and a free lunch. We actually expect it to increase our revenues in the current year, putting our nutrition services fund at a very positive, sustainable balance. And then these are the other district funds, and we have other information regarding the bond funds, et cetera. As we get closer to April, Albert Dutchover will be presenting the summer projects list to you, and we will go into the bond fund activity at greater detail at that time. And that is the end of my report this evening.
Board members, any questions, comments?
I just want to say I appreciate the work to make sure we have an accurate student count and bring our budget up. I mean, school funding is very complicated and even more complicated now that we have current year funding, and we have to be very watchful on that. So thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else? Okay, no other questions. And just for, again, information to the public, board members have had the opportunity to review the slides that Ms. Betts presented, among others, and so the lack of any question doesn't mean anything other than they have reviewed the information and they are satisfied with the information at this point, and we will await a more comprehensive presentation next week. All right, we move to item 8, consent agenda items for consideration, discussion, direction, or possible approval. Is there a motion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Uggetti, thank you. There is a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, then we will vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as printed and presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move to item 9, action item 9.01, discussion and action on accepting school calendar option 121 or calendar option 222 for the 2022, 2023, 24 school years. Is there a motion, or by way of introduction, Dr. McCord, and then we'll ask for a motion?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, you introduced the item extremely well back on February 2nd. Mr. Martin presented in a work study the survey related to the calendar. We both surveyed the staff of GPS as well as our families. And for those of you that don't know what 121 and 222 mean, 121 is the traditional calendar that we've been using for several years, and that means 1 week at fall break off 2 weeks at winter break, and 1 week during spring break. 222 goes along the same model except an extra week, 2 weeks at fall break, 2 weeks at winter break, 2 weeks at spring break. And the options for you to consider tonight, again, are for the 22-23 school year and the 23-24 school year. Mr. Martin is here if you have any questions.
Before we go to Mr. Martin, is there a motion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, I motion that we adopt the 2-2-2 calendar for the 2022-23 and 23-24 school years.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Is there a second? I will second that motion and open the floor for Mr. Martin's presentation and/or discussion questions from the board.
Good
Mr. Martin.
evening, governing board members, Dr. McCord, community members. As you recall, we did review the survey results that were given to both the staff and the community in December, and then we reviewed them at the prior work study here in February. And I'm here tonight to answer any questions that you may have.
Can you give us the percentages, please?
Yes.
Once again.
Okay, so this year in December of 2020, we had 9,942 parents take the survey, and 50.5% of the parents opted for the 222 model. Staff response was 2,979 responses, and 65% voted in favor of the 222 model.
And what about the other? Do I have to figure that out?
Okay, no. So for the 121 on the parents, it would be 49.5%. And then on the 121 for the staff, that was 35%.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, can you talk about when we have heat days at elementary? I mean, this would be starting school earlier, towards the end of July if we went to the 222 model. What do we do for students for their recess time?
Sure, great question. It is similar to what we used to call the rainy day schedule, and now different schools call it different things, but really it's for acclimated weather. And if the heat index at that day during lunchtime, particularly in July and August, is over that threshold, then the students normally eat in the cafeteria as they normally do, and then instead of going out to the playground for that 15 or 20 minutes of recess, schools have come up with different options. Most of them still use their paraprofessionals, and instead of watching them outside on the playground, the students usually are divided into a series of rooms. The most popular areas that are utilized during that time for, quote, indoor recess or activities is the library and the project room. Some schools, of course, have other empty rooms or classrooms that they use as well. Right. And during that time, then they do alternative activities. They might have board games or different activities. Some of them might be showing some type of video. Students can read. That's left up to the discretion of each individual school and paraprofessional sometimes as well.
All right, and when we talked earlier today, you said the morning time when kids go out, it's not usually too hot for them at that point.
Correct. So for those grade levels at schools that have an AM recess, that's usually somewhere between 9:30 and probably 10:30. Usually the heat index at that time, even if it's a heat advisory day, is not hot enough at that time, so the students are able to get outside for that AM recess. We have fewer schools now that have a PM recess, partly due to the 8:10 to 2:55 school time, with all our elementary schools getting out earlier than they used to. And during that time, there are some that still have a PM recess. It really depends upon the daily schedule of each grade level. But if they do, then they would also spend time usually in their teacher's classroom for that 15-minute PM recess. AM and PM recess at the elementary schools is normally supervised by those teachers at that particular grade level. So they figure out how to do that in their own classrooms if they have to stay inside.
And just remind us, a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a law giving more recess, but we had already had that in place in our district. Is that correct?
Correct. We pretty much had it in place. We did have some intermediate 4th and 5th grade classrooms that did have to go back to adding an AM or a PM recess in addition to the lunch recess. That was school by school, and so that was the only major change of area. Otherwise, we were in compliance with the new ARS statute regarding recess at the elementary schools in grades K through 5.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Martin, can you give me the dates for summer school this year, please?
So for this year, and this is summer of 2021 coming up,
right?
They will be June 7th through July 2nd. And one of the things I will note is that we will put on, we've talked about this previously, and on these calendars, we will note the summer school period. So in this case, on the 2022-23 calendar, we would note that summer school would be June 5th through June 30th, so families could plan as they are looking at that. We know we have many families that do participate in summer school. And then in June of 2024, on the second calendar that we're looking for your approval, it would be June 3rd through June 28th for that 4-week period.
So it would give families at least, the 222 would give, even though we're starting earlier, would give the families at least a month.
Yes, correct.
Of a break. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
And all of these, the 121 and the 222 proposals, as you well know, school is proposed to end on the Thursday before Memorial Day. And so then summer school starts the Monday, 1 week after Memorial Day on all versions of these calendars.
And then what would be the first day of school for those 2 years? I'm looking here, the 25th of July would be the first day of school in 2022. And then in the 2023, it would be the July 24th. Is that correct?
So yes, I'm pulling up the calendars here. So on the 222 model for 22-23, the first day of school is Monday, July 25th on this proposed calendar. And then on the 222 for 23-24, it is Monday, July 24th. And that is 9 days earlier than the 121 model, which starts the following Wednesday on those two calendar options.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Yes,
Ms. Wood?
yes, thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. I had a few concerns. One thing actually I wanted to point out on the calendars is on the 222 calendars. Okay, just one of them. Just the 2022, 2023. We just need to change on September 22nd, 23rd, just on this middle column. It says grading day, but it needs to be parent-teacher conference.
Good catch, Mrs.
But I
Wood.
see the rest, it looks good on the other one. But my concern is, one thing that I want to bring up was about the half-days scheduled. And I know part of it is due to the scheduling this year and all that we've all experienced this year. But I am concerned. About two things. One, I know our goal is to provide the best learning opportunities for our students and the best learning environments for our students. And I know a big part of that is to have the professional development opportunities for our teachers. But I'm concerned that 4 half-days, which really is only 8 hours, 4 half-days toward teacher professional development, which is really only 8 hours, but I think it turns into more than that with half-days. It changes the nature of the day. It really does. It impacts what teachers are able to do, especially, well, all teachers, elementary and junior high and high school. When the classes are so short in junior high and high school, it really makes it less than an optimal learning day. And so I'm concerned that by continually adding more and more half-days, that we are interrupting the schedule and flow of learning and the expectation of learning and the opportunity for teachers to teach what they need to get through. And so I'm wondering if there's something else that we could look at. I would like to see maybe 2 half-days for professional development, and then if we could, and I apologize that I'm offering this at this point, but if we could look at the Monday after the April break, the spring holiday. We have a 4-day weekend on that. I wondered if we could take that spring holiday, put that back. So on the 2022-2023 calendar, it's Monday, April 10th. Wonder if we actually go to school that day and then look at an option of moving that day maybe to after fall break and trying to find a way to fund an extra day of a teacher contract so that we could have a learning day. This is a lot of
Would there
suggestions.
be I think that would be an additional cost because
It would.
we
And I would like to prioritize that if we could. If we couldn't find the way to fund it starting in 2022, 2023, then if it was on the calendar, we would do like we did last time where it was just another day, one more day. I don't know if can we do more than 10 days? I don't know if that's part of the problem, but it would just be another day like we did last year, I believe, or the year before when we moved the Monday after fall break. We moved the teacher training day back before school started, and then we just had an extra Monday. That's what kind of started the extra Mondays after fall break. So I know that's a lot to drop right now. I don't know if how you guys would feel about even looking at it or discussing it. I feel like I also wanted to point out in the 2023-2024 calendar that spring break is March 11th through March 22nd, and then the very next weekend, March 29th and April 1st, just as how Easter falls, is that 4-day weekend again. And I just wondered, again, with that springtime, that's when the testing, remember we'd heard before from principals that the second semester, there's only 88 days in both of them on this 222 calendar. And that would give one more day back to the second semester. But the thing is that April time period is when we have testing, those testing windows. And as well as in high school, they're getting ready for AP tests, which are early May usually. I just think those are critical days of learning. And I would like to see us find a way to use that in a different way. So again, that's a lot to drop at this point. Those are my thoughts. I guess I would propose, well, I don't know what I would propose. I would want to hear your thoughts, board members, if you think that's worth exploring or.
My only concern, Ms. Wood, would be that these proposals have gone through an established committee of folks who have given us their best recommendation over their study period, which has been a significant amount of time, and I think that creates a challenge for us and the work that they have done to give us their best recommendation.
So there was a calendar committee, Dr. Martin? Or who have we submitted it to?
Wow, I'm a doctor now. I like
Oh, whoops. Dr. Santa Cruz, Mr. Martin.
I'll take it.
Yes.
This year, we didn't have a formal committee like we did 2 years ago. We basically took the options. We have looked at them with administrators and other groups. We've also briefly shared them with IBBT, which has representatives from different groups as well, too, to look at the calendars.
Okay.
Well, and we have had the feedback from all of the parents and staff that we
That's true.
send it out to them, and so I think it's
well, the only thing that would change it wouldn't change the start and end date.
No, but it does. I personally feel like if we put professional development in a shorter frame, a half day, strategically throughout the year, I think that is a better use for teachers, that they get that, I don't know what I'd call it, shot in the arm, just get that opportunity to learn something, then take it and use it in their classroom. And I think that's really, really powerful, as opposed to putting it on a whole day or moving it to a different, at an additional cost. And the second part of that is, if it is an additional cost, then we are committing a future board to that cost. And we already know by our experience this year, that prioritizing what is most important in the budget can be stressful because everything's important. I mean, everything is important. And so my concern is that additional cost of paying them for an additional day for professional development, where this way we can, parents have a little, an extra time with their children. I know it's hard for those working parents.
We have over 8 half days now with this. It's a lot. It's almost if you start looking and if you have your children in school, besides the early out, there's many, many half days. It's very disruptive for students. This is a great way to save money and to give teachers that professional development, which is important. But I'm concerned about our students' learning, and I'm concerned about putting that first. And I think that this isn't the best way. I do apologize that I didn't bring this up earlier. I was looking more at the 121 and 222, so I can understand that maybe it's late in this process, but I am very concerned that we have gotten away from putting the opportunities for student learning first, and that with all the half days and other things that we've put in, Wednesdays have become less than an ideal time from my perspective with my children for the learning to happen. That's my concern. So, and I'm not saying we would still have the 2 half days throughout the year. We would have one in August and we would have one in January. I just would remove the one in March and the one in October, but I can see that as well. And I do think that the 4-day weekend after the 2-week spring break is a bit ridiculous in the spring. On the 2023-2024, I don't think that's the best use of our time in April and May. But when should I have brought this up? I guess at the last work study?
Dr. Sanders.
Go ahead, Mr. Carr.
Thank you. Ms. Wood, I don't think you have to apologize for bringing issues up. The reality is we can't discuss this outside of the board meeting. We were presented at a work study. It was a good presentation, and we've all had time to see things afterwards, and we all discover things, and sometimes things are said on the dais. I had not noticed in spite of looking at this calendar many times, had not noticed the 2-week spring break followed immediately by a 4-day weekend. And if I were a high school teacher in particular, an AP teacher, I'd be very, very concerned about that in trying to prepare my students for success. So I think it's a valid point, and I don't know that you have someplace else to bring it up. I would suggest that we're not under a deadline of today to pass this, and particularly the 23-24. I think we need to look at that matter, perhaps. And I know it makes the terms, the half semesters uneven, but perhaps we seriously talk about the benefits of moving the first week of spring break from the 11th to the 15th of March to the 25th through 29th. You could still give the Monday off, but that gives 1 day back that you could use someplace else, or shorten the school year or start a day later or whatever it be. But I think academically you're in essence affecting students academically, because the 4-day week following 2 weeks, it's going to take kids 2 days to get back in the routine. Then they're going to have 2 days of education, and they're going to be hitting a 4-week break. It's just, I think Ms. Wood makes a valid point that I hadn't considered or heard. And not trying to create more work, but I think it's something we need to seriously consider. That's probably my greatest concern. I also, if we could find a way to realistically do it or understand the impact, I think one of the things that we have with our neighboring districts that are on this calendar is they do that extra day professional, and it's one of the things that the overall contract of teachers looks a little bit better because they get an extra 1 or 2 days pay. I don't know that we can find a way to do that. Ms. Betts, how much does an extra day cost us across the system?
OTM actually today ran the numbers, and if we it gives certified staff an additional day. It's approximately $700,000 to $750,000 per day with salary and benefits for that additional day.
And that is my concern because, you know, in a year like this year where we have to really work to figure out how we're going to address a deficit, and that was my concern when we traded those days instead of spending that extra money. When it was brought up, that was my concern. In my experience being on this board, it's great to have a year like last year where we are able to do a nice raise and add a few positions to help us out. That is an exceptional year. It's not the standard. I feel like I've cut the budget more than I've added things to it and this is my 9th year of doing a budget. So I just want to be extremely careful not to tie the hands of a future board to where I don't know what that year is going to look like. Hopefully it will be better than this one. I hope there won't be a pandemic. But I really want to be careful not to tie the hands of a future board.
Well, in that case, let's not adopt a calendar at all, because we're now tying the days of meetings. I mean, every decision we make, and I say that facetiously, and I apologize if that comes across rudely, that wasn't my intent. And I get, you're talking monetarily, and that's your comment, but, you know, but every decision we make does in fact impact the decisions that we've made in the future. I to a great degree actually agree with your comment in spite of my remarks. At the same time, you know, I do agree with some of the concerns, and I hear those concerns, and I do know that we cut to the half days with not necessarily with the intent of that being a permanent, but like anything, once we find some way to save money, it becomes permanent. We don't revisit it. So I'm not adverse to doing that. What I would suggest, if we're going to go this approach, and I haven't spoken to the overall calendar, let me do that just in turn instead of going back and forth. I personally struggle with the 2-2 calendar. Now that's my personal. I like the traditional calendar. If it were up to me, we would go back to, you know, start after Labor Day, and let kids have a summer and let kids work and let kids have that experience. That's not really an option because the state and the national laws have prolonged the school year and added to the school year. We could shorten it by removing spring break and fall break entirely, but that was, at the time that was adopted, I was not on the board, and there was a lot of discussion at that time. Well, are they just trying to elongate the year and make a move towards year-round school? But now that it's in place, people have accepted it, liked it, and it's been positively received. And adding that Monday afterwards, at first people were like, why are you doing that? And now people take advantage of that weekend. So it's one of those things that as people get used to something, they see the advantages. You know, 2-3 years ago, the last time we visited calendars, I made the statement very similar to this, that I prefer the traditional calendar, but I based my vote publicly in my comments off the fact that the majority of parents wanted the traditional calendar, even though the majority of teachers at that point wanted the 2-2-2 calendar. I personally prefer the 1-2-1 calendar, but staying consistent with my rationale in the last round of discussion on calendars, where I went with what the majority of parents want, I plan to support a 2-2 calendar. What I would perhaps suggest is let's adopt the 22-23 calendar, or vote to see if we adopt it, and perhaps we put the 23-24 calendar on hold to address some of the issues that Ms. Wood brought up, particularly about the spring break, but also to answer some of her questions. Rather than, you know, I don't think that's more than maybe the next meeting to allow a little bit of discovery on some of those questions that we haven't been able to discuss publicly.
Mr. Carr, I don't disagree with the intent of what you're suggesting. I would modify slightly and say, why don't we approve what's before us with the caveat that the 23-24 calendar be reviewed and adjusted as necessary, so that everyone is aware that we have some concerns, or some of us have some concerns about that particular year in a specific area, and try to smooth that area out if we can.
Well, if I can, Dr.
Go ahead.
Santa Cruz, two other things. Again, I would prefer that we don't have that Monday after that in that April on either of those calendars, but I guess, if that doesn't go through, that doesn't go through. I prefer that we, even if we don't have a teacher day, that we start maybe a day later or move it to the first semester somehow. Another thing, could we just have 2 half days for professional development and find another way to do the other, even if we can't put in the full day? Could we just take out those other 2, and then, I don't know if that's possible. That's just another suggestion. And then I also wanted to bring up that we received a few emails, and just wanted to kind of discuss this, a few emails, and I'm sure you'll read them, and maybe this were statements in some of the statements made today online, the online comments. Some of the concerns were, if we change to the 222, they were concerned that we've had so much change, and again, that's partly due to this year, that is it worth it to just keep the 121 just to have some consistency for families? This won't go into effect until next year, 22-23, not this coming year, so that gives a little bit of help there. But I wondered what your other thoughts were on that. And then also there was someone who mentioned that summer internships for students, if you're looking like at college opportunities, particularly between your junior and senior year, they're often July, like the 4 weeks of July. So this would make it difficult for someone to do that and start school. I don't know that that's the majority of our students, but certainly that would be some of our students. Could we invite them to do that and then come to school, contact with their teachers and come to school if that's the opportunity that they need to take?
That's what I would do if I were that parent. When we lived in Chandler, which I lived in Chandler for 1.5 years, and on that calendar, my son attended the National Scout Jamboree and just missed the first few days of school. That was just how it had to be handled. And I think if someone has a great opportunity, like an internship at NASA, I would suggest they go with that, talk to their teachers in advance, make sure that they do what they need to, and make up those days. One of the reasons I was leaning more towards the 222 is because Queen Creek and Higley and Chandler all do this. So it's not like we're the first ones to do it, but it did seem like we're tending towards that with our survey. So that's where I was, because we actually have a majority of parents who want the 222 and a majority of the staff. That's the reason I was offering that one as the motion.
With regard to the comment on internships and the like, it's been my experience, both as an educator in the district and as an administrator, that whenever opportunities present themselves for families in our community, the school and the district has always worked to help benefit that student and that parent. And I don't think that would be a problem, regardless of what calendar we select. We have a tradition, I guess, of working with our parent community when things of import affect the family and a student. So I don't see that as a monumental concern.
Thank you.
And Dr. Santa Cruz, I'd echo that. I know a few years ago, 2 of my children, when they were in high school, had the opportunity to travel over to Africa with a humanitarian trip, and every teacher was bent over backwards to accommodate them. Now, one of the differences that Ms. Wood points out was it was mid-year, so they could talk to the teachers before they went, get work done before they went, etc. I think teachers would be equally accommodating, but it's a little bit harder to get in touch with your teacher if you're missing the first week or first 2 weeks of school. And so we may want to consider some formal or informal policy adjustments that allow for that at some point.
Yeah, I think that's implicit in many of our policies, and where a teacher is unavailable, that's why we hire principals.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say that I would agree with Mr. Carr. I think we shouldn't be starting school till after Labor Day either. Having taught in the dark ages when that happened, it was really much easier in terms of the heat and all of that. And I don't think that the 9 days or 8 days or whatever with the heat the way it is now is going to make any difference. I too, understand people saying that they don't want a lot of change, but like you just said, it's not for another year. I was surprised that our community, the majority of the people that were polled, want the 222. I know that the teachers or the staff was overwhelming both years. It wasn't just a slight majority, but it was an overwhelming majority. And I think that, we have to listen to them. And then as far as the half days, and I would just like to say that I know that sometimes it seems like it interferes with learning, and I really understand that completely. But we are, there's so many things that teachers have to learn now that they didn't have to learn before. And things have changed so much, and they change so quickly. And we have to give them the opportunity to not have to do everything on their own time. And even when we give them the half days, I can't tell you how many teachers still are taking a class from 4 to 5 or 4 to 6 or whatever on their own time. And I know that's part of being a teacher. I get that. But I think that we are enhancing student learning by giving the teachers the opportunity to improve their skills. So I understand what you're saying, and I get that, and I know that can be an issue. However, I do really believe that it is an integral part of our learning is giving our teachers those opportunities. And I think, I look at what we're doing in this district now in terms of our staff development compared to, just the growth through the last 10 or 15 years. And we've put together, you guys have put together probably the premier staff development program in the state for teachers. And, I see all the time what they're doing. And, I think it's extremely valuable for us to give the teachers the opportunity. So, like I said, if I were in charge of the world, we'd be going back after Labor Day, because I can remember duty was a whole lot easier, but that's not the way it's going to be. So I think we have to be, I appreciate that you've taken the opportunity to survey the community and the teachers, and we need to give them a voice. And we got a lot of responses. When you think about it, I know we have a much, much larger district, but that's a lot of responses.
Additional.
I guess just 2 other thoughts. One, it is a majority, but it's a very small majority, but it was last year too. So it's a pretty even split as far as the parents go. But also second, I think it's just important to also say it's 1 week, it's about 1.5 weeks earlier. It's not as early as Chandler and Queen Creek go back. They go back even a week earlier than this. And so that kind of speaks to my point too of it's really not about that students are going to retain learning better. It's a 1 week difference basically from what we're doing. It's not about if one thing is academically better or not. It's really, I guess, about preference. I think Mr. Martin has said that before, and about making decisions and then going forward with it. Again, if there was one way or the other that to me said, again, I guess that's why I'm saying to me the academic and learning, that I brought up the concerns that I have about the academic and learning time. But either calendar, I think, addresses equally the learning retention of students, the opportunities that they have to learn, that kind of a thing. I don't think it's that big of a difference, the 1-2-1 or 2-2-2, the way that we have it now. So,
Well, and I would hope that we could address any issues on those shorter days, that the time does get well used. I will just say, of course, my kids started in public schools quite a long time ago, 30 years ago, and I would say that the way we use time today in our schools is way more effective and well used than it was when my kids started elementary school. I mean, the way we are targeted in instruction and we use time and we get kids up and moving, and the level that we're teaching at, I just am always impressed when I visit a school to see what kids are learning. And, you know, I say, I am not smarter than a fifth grader. I feel like I need to go back to school. I have more wisdom. Because I've lived longer, but they are learning so much, and their time is really well used, and I can tell you some eye-opening stories about how time was not used back in the day. So I understand that maybe you feel it's not as well used as it could be, but I do think that we're doing much better now than we were 30 years ago or 20 years ago.
and I'm not suggesting or faulting teachers in any way. I'm saying when you have 30 minutes once a month on a Wednesday or a Friday, that changes, that does change your schedule, impacts what you can teach, what you have time for. Not if your intent is to use it or not. And I do think that is important, that we keep, like you said, keep emphasizing that. And I appreciate all that teachers do to make that happen, so.
Okay,
And I'll make one last remark if I can.
go ahead, Mr. Carr.
Thank you. I'm just looking again at this calendar, 23-24. If I start the week of February 18th or 19th, since that's a Monday, I have a 4-day week. I have a 5-day week with a half day. I have a 5-day week, and I have 0, 0, 4, 4. So in that 7-week period.
No, you have a half day on this one too.
In that.
That 8th is a half day.
Okay.
So you don't have a full week.
I don't have a full week in that entire 7-week period, and I think that's what creates the concern.
It's a concern.
If we can schedule that, I mean, that's disruptive to education, that's disruptive to parents who are trying to work and employ, and so on. So, to me, that would be the consideration. Can we just look at that? I'm appreciate your suggestion, Dr. Santa Cruz, if we adopt these, but if we can adopt these with a plan to come back and maybe revisit this in the next 1 to 2 board meetings to see if we can find a modification that works, and actually put it on the agenda so it doesn't just fall off.
How about if I amend my motion to include, I think I said adopt the 2-2-2 schedule, bringing back 2023, 2024 calendar at the next business meeting to look at options for adjusting the calendar.
I would like us to look at that same period for 2022, 2023, because it's very similar as far as not hardly a full week.
And I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn, but listening to all of you, some options when I look at this, the Monday after both of the spring holidays, if we wanted to, we could make that a school day, so that would be April 10th and April 1st, no fooling, would be school day. And what we could do then is start the first day of school actually in the fall. Instead of on a Monday, we could start it on a Tuesday, and that would push it back one more day. And that also in the semesters, then you'd go from 92 in the first semester to 91, and the second semester would be 89. If you look when new teachers start back in July on the 15th and the 14th, if you move it one day, everything, then they would start on that following Monday, the 18th and the 17th, when new teachers to our district start. So one of the things, that teachers, I will say, is that first week back is always long days for both teachers and students getting back into the routine. So having a 4-day week with students perhaps is more similar to normally here on the 1-2-1. Typically we have a 3 days back starting on Wednesday. So that's one thing we can do if you are interested in exploring that option.
I think the motion stands. We want to revisit and modify specific aspects of the calendars. So in concept, the motion is adopting a 2-2-2 calendar, and the modification
Well, why don't we just say the motion is to adopt the 2-2-2 calendar for 2022-23 and 23-24, making bringing it back at the next board meeting to make slight adjustments.
Are you saying next week at the brief board meeting?
No,
Or a
no,
month
at
from
the
now?
business meeting.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then maybe if there is an opportunity, maybe we could just look at some options at the brief board meeting so we can have time to think about it, if that can work into our plan.
I think that those options can be submitted to us via the superintendent's report.
Okay.
They can be, and we can touch base on it on March 2nd, which is next week. Just know also we have a lot of things that are coming up within March that are pretty important as well. So please give us some leeway if we fall behind on something.
Yep.
And Dr. Santa Cruz, I'd want to be very careful if we go that route of adopting this, knowing that it's modified, it will be modified, that we not publish it more actively, because as soon as we publish it on that calendar list on the website, people are going to start saying, oh, this is the dates. And if we come back and change these dates, people have planned,
Right.
vacations and other things for those 2 weeks. So
I think that's a given, that while we may approve, as the motion stated this evening, it will not be published until we make the necessary modifications at our next business meeting, after our next business meeting, I should say.
Could I just ask, is the concern to not make the change that Mr. Martin offered tonight? Is there just a concern, you want to just look at it, make sure that everybody has a chance to look at it? Or why not adopt what he suggested?
I would prefer we look at it just so so that when it is finally, we weren't rushed in any way, shape, or form, or anybody was confused about what was discussed right here.
So should we just table it then? I'm just
You-
asking,
you-
what's the least confusing? What's the
You
best?
could table it.
I would rather just adopt it, because I think if we do something, I think it should just be minor.
Okay.
I mean, like, a
Okay.
change a day or two is a minor change. More than that, I think is problematic.
I think I just want to respect the level of participation of folks
Yes.
who were involved, whether that was Mr. Martin and touching base with various employee groups and parents, or whether it was a full committee. I just want to respect that piece of the work.
And I think with the modifications we talked about tonight don't impact the essence of what we've already went out and surveyed for, and so I think we'll be okay.
And are we ready to vote? Does everyone understand what they're voting on? Okay. So all those in favor of adopting calendars under the 222 model with a return at a business meeting to review modifications to appropriate calendars. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 9.02, results-based funding distribution. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members. Every year for the past 4 years, we've come to you for your approval. Based on Arizona revised statutes, the results-based funding and its implications for Gilbert Public Schools. This is the fourth year results-based funding has been allocated. The funding consists of legislative, statewide appropriations that the Arizona Department of Education administers and distributes to eligible school districts or charter schools based on statutory formula. Through applying the statutory formula, GPS received $1,484,173,069 to be distributed among 10 identified schools. Those schools are Ashland Ranch, Canyon Rim Elementary, Carroll Ray Ranch Elementary, Gilbert Classical Academy, Greenfield Elementary, Harris Elementary, Highland Park Elementary, Neely Traditional Academy, Cortill Elementary, and Patterson Elementary. Receipt of the funds is dependent on the number of students who attended the school on the 100th day of school during the 2019-20 school year. The funds may be distributed in a number of different ways. However, GPS has decided to continue to distribute the funds in the same way as the previous school year. A stipend will be given to current qualifying staff in those buildings. Current Global Academy staff who worked at one of the 10 qualifying schools in the 1920 school year will also be eligible. The allocation for stipends to include payroll benefits will be 90% of the school allocation, with the remaining 10% allocated to the school for professional development and other eligible expenses. Each eligible certified staff member, as previously defined, will receive a portion based on their full-time equivalency, whereas each full-time staff member will receive an $800 stipend, also based on their full-time equivalency. The result-based funding monies will be distributed in one check, and payment will be on March 16th, 2021.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. You have heard the rationale. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the results-based funding as presented by Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Ms. Ugetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Is there any discussion?
Just a question. I was listening to hear, did you give us details from the state of how they selected this? Because two schools that were it previously didn't qualify last year, but I don't feel like we had the same testing. So I'm just wondering, what was their...
They've never been the same year over year.
Right.
So it depends on free and reduced lunch. It depends on test scores. There's a lot of, and then there's
Just
some little
little
other pieces that
formulas
go
that
into
they
it
put
that
together. Okay.
either include them or knock them out depending on certain aspects. There is a link in our board agenda under this item, and you can go click on the link to look through it.
Okay.
It's pretty comprehensive, to be real honest
Okay.
with you. It's not simple,
Okay,
I guess
thank
is the
you.
best way to
That's
put it.
great. I will look at that. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, then the motion is before you. All those in favor of 9.02, results-based funding distribution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10, request for future agenda items. If there isn't something that one of us has a burning desire to present openly this evening, please make sure you make contact with Ms. Wilson so we can put it on to a future agenda. We'll move to item 11, board committees and reports. Item 11.01, Gilbert Ed Foundation, Ms. Humphries.
So right now, the Gilbert Education Foundation is working through the number of grants that were given in January to make sure that the teachers have what they need. And then they are beginning to work with the technology department on the SETI conference that will be held after school gets out, where teachers can go get professional development and training and learn more about technology and integrate that into their classrooms. And so the SETI conference coming up, there'll be one day in person and one day virtual to help their people social distance. And it's a really great conference. And so I appreciate Gilbert Education Foundation helping to do the funding for that, because it is a real benefit to our teachers and our staff.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. 11.02, City of Mesa Liaison, Ms. Wood.
I don't have anything to report tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. 11.03, 11.04, Town of Gilbert Liaison and the Finance Audit Committee, Mr. Carr.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. I have nothing from the town of Gilbert. The Finance Audit Committee did meet this afternoon, or this morning, I guess. It was noontime, so whatever you want to call it. Had a good discussion. One of the things that the board may be aware of, or might want to be aware of, is that our current contract with the external auditor expires after this year. So that will be going out for an RFP shortly. And then we reviewed the comprehensive annual financial report, and we'll be in the next meetings talking about the internal audit plan as to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Item 11.05, Insurance Trust Representative, Ms. Ujetti.
I just want to say that we met this afternoon and we'll be bringing information to the board for at the end of March, next week. And we have good news for a change. Not for a change, but we really have good news.
Good.
So, and can I say something else that has nothing to do with this? Will you slap me around or anything?
Okay. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the Don and our videographer for giving us the opportunity to come and read. And I would like to say that I belong to a group on Facebook that are storytellers all over the country. And I was telling them about this, and they were like, wow, what a great district. Although I do want to say that I got bumped by Dr. McCord. I had my 10 books, and I only got through 3 of them. So
Well, I can see why you got bumped.
I wasn't happy.
I have no comment.
And item 11.06, Legislative Committee, there are several bills moving through the legislature, about 4 in the House, 5 in the House, and 4 in the Senate, that will have an impact on our business at the district level. And there are at least 2, if not 3 bills moving through the legislature that have or could have a direct impact on the way boards function. So pay attention and make contact where you feel appropriate.
Will we get paid?
What's that?
No.
Are we going to get paid?
A cup of coffee maybe one day. Or a donut.
Ms. Ujetti, I heard they're going to triple your salary. For the public, lest you misinterpret that comment, the board is unpaid.
And that is really all I have to add. I know that you're all paying attention to ASBA and the organizations that you belong to that are submitting emails to you. It's a pretty active place downtown right now. Item 12, future meeting dates. Mr. McCord, Dr. McCord?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, just want to include one that isn't there, and that is a board retreat number 2, continuation of our last board retreat this Friday morning at 9 a.m. And then March 2nd, we have a board work study and brief board business meeting. March 16th is a policy committee meeting. And March 30th is our regular board business meeting.
Okay, thank you. We are now at item 13, adjournment, item 13.01. Is there a motion?
Still.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti. Typically, there's a great deal of discussion for this part. Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Thank you, board members. Thank you, those of you who were here and on live stream. This meeting is adjourned.